Hi, I'm James. Hello. So Benny, this is Benny on the screen. It's a piece of software I've been developing for probably a decade, if I'm really honest. But like the version you can see less time, is most of what I spend my time on at the moment. Um, I think what I'll do to start, I'm just going to play you a bit of one of my songs off of it. This is the software that I write in, that I play live in. Um, Hang on. I'm gonna perfectly for a software demo. One thing didn't work. That's um, but actually, it's been quite a big part of this talk is about how important it is that it's reliable. So that's normally I get a little bit more sound check. So that's the. So what I want to start, just a show of hands, who here has used a modular synth or some modular software or anything like that? Okay, that's quite a lot. And Max MSP, does anyone use that? Cool. Great. Does anyone know my music? I guess that's okay, cool. So I guess the main question is, why have you spent so much of your life on developing a big Max patch and then sharing it? So how I'm going to explain that is just to talk about how it's come about in my own career and intersected with my own records, what I was interested in, and how I started touring live electronic music. So in 2013, I put out a record called The Inheritors, which came out of a few years previously. I'd got quite bored with my own creative practice using the computer to make music in what you call a traditional DAW. And I bought a modular and just gradually started building it up. I was really interested in kind of rebuilding instruments from the beginning. Like, instead of buying a polysynth, I'll build one in the modular, and where it goes wrong or where it's imperfect or where I mess with it, that's where the interesting bits of the songs were. And what I discovered as well was this idea of modular sequencing, where instead of playing a MIDI clip out of Ableton or something like that, you have a sequencer where you can modulate the start or modulate the transposition. For example, the bass line in that one, I can modulate the transposition of it in a scale or whatever, things like that. And that completely changed my music, and I was really happy with that record when it was finished. Yeah. So, and then an opportunity came along to play it live. At that point, I was a DJ, which was nice. It's a really fun thing to do is DJing. It's really improvisational. You're totally free what you do next within the context of the scene, people's expectations, beat matching, loads of rules that people have in their heads about what they want in a club or don't. But you are at least, you're you're totally improvising in your set. You're not going in with a planned set and doing the same thing every night. So when I got this opportunity to, like, Tom York sent me an email and said, will you support us on tour playing live? I like your album. And I felt like, well, I definitely can't say no to that. And it would be really fun to do it. But there's no point doing it if it's less than what I do anyway. And I felt like if I just took the stems of the album and played out of a computer or something like that, that's kind of like DJing, apart from there's no improvisational element to it anymore. You're maybe putting some, putting some effects on some stems or rearranging things, but kind of the surprises are really limited in that context. So I realized I have to recreate the album on stage somehow. But that album, using the Modular as your main, I was using the Modular Max MSP and one song was one patch. I would wire up a load of stuff, get some systems going, feedback happening, like just find the balance of it. And this would be quite an unstable system generally. And I'd do a couple of takes, record the WAVs and make a song out of that. But that's impossible to take on the road because each song is a whole patch that uses the whole of my Modular, the whole of my studio PC, other bits of studio, all wired up in a setup which would take me a day to put together and then wouldn't work the next day when I turned it on again. So even if I had like infinite budget and Nils Fram's collection of trucks to like deliver my stuff to the stage, it probably still wouldn't work anyway. So I had to work out a way to, how can I like shrink this, hybridize it, and keep what's important out of it, but at the same time make it practical. And that is the last 10 years of my life. That's been what I've been thinking about, I guess. So I started out, yeah. I think I've covered everything. Yeah. So I started out with Ableton, and I would use, what I'd realized is certain modules, you can't really, I hadn't found a way to fake that in the computer. Like you can't, distortions are quite hard to get right in the computer, filters that kind of, and also I was big into kind of feedback, cross-modulation kind of patching in the Modular. For example, there's a track called Intercity 125 on the album, which has a really nice kind of synthy, brassy pop, which is made by putting a Wasp filter's bandpass output fed back into its cutoff so that it just does this magic sound. And I tried to, in Gen, in Max MSP, I tried to copy it, but it's really reliant on a sort of feedback loop happening in real time in electricity in a way that's quite hard. I've just never got to it in software. So I thought, okay, I've got to have 2 Wasp filters in the case, for example. And then, so how it worked was the irreplaceable bits of hardware were treated as sends or inserts out of Ableton that I'd have, and then I had tons of Max for Life patches doing running weird sequences, pretending to be an envelope into a quantizer, things like that would make this kind of non-linear playable sequencing happen. And then tons of Max for Life stuff doing pipe work just to kind of turn things on and off so that every song didn't have the same sounds in it, because you kind of and it worked. Like that tour was, I had a drummer, Tom Page, playing opposite me. We had human timing linking the 2 systems. It was exciting. And it worked. The tour was fine. When you're supporting a band like that, you get like 5, 10 minute, 20 minute sound checks. There was one time they're like, I don't think you're going to get a sound check. And because the piano tuner's in, later on, I found out that the piano tuner was just for show because it was actually a MIDI'd piano. Never mind. When you're in that position, and generally, even though I've been lucky to have quite a nice status in some of the shows I've played, sometimes you turn up and there's like a 10-minute changeover, and you've got, and so doing this Tom York tour first was really great preparation for that. Like no one's going to treat you like you're special. You've just got to turn up and get it working straight away. So it doesn't matter how clever you think your Modular is. If you can't do that, it's useless. So I think it solved that, and it was improvisational. I could take the songs into new places. I didn't have to stick to any kind of arrangement or anything like that. But it did really feel like it was pinned down to just playing those songs. And so I started thinking about, for the next record, how am I going to escape that? And what is all the time in the back of my mind going through this period of time, I was thinking about what is a live performance, which bit is necessary. My friend Luke had his Ableton Live set up, and he showed me a new controller he got. He's, look, I can program hi-hat patterns with these buttons. I can kind of put them in. Oh, that's nice, Luke. Which patterns are you going to do? The 16ths and the 8ths? Any others? Like, no, of course not. So he'd brought a performance element that wasn't actually meaningful to the show, and that's the kind of the thought that I'm most interested in. When you're playing electronic music, are you doing something that means something, or are you just doing admin to make your electronic music come out of the speakers like you want it to? And that, a lot of time when I see people playing, well, the thought of myself playing a modular only set, it would be 100% admin. Some people really transcend this, actually, thinking about it. But if I was doing it, I'd just be doing admin, trying to make the thing work, rather than the gestures, which make someone feel something, including me. Just go over some more the other limitations of the first generation of my live set, which I think is, yeah, maybe I can talk about them next. So I improved it, basically. It wasn't very improvisational, so I spent a lot of time building Max for Live patches. I had a monome grid, a monome arc, a bunch of stuff that you could press a button and you could be playing keyboard through one oscillator. You press another button, you'd be playing a sampled choir somewhere else. You could do all sorts of stuff very quickly and improvisationally. And I did a session where I was kind of writing, like we did a Radio 3 thing with Marcus Hamblett invited me, and I took that system and kind of wrote some stuff in the moment, and it was fun and it worked. But at the same time, and this is also the setup that I used to write the Animal Spirits album, which was my next album, like 4 years after that. And we recorded the album using it, and played one gig, and I've only got one slide for today, but this is that live set, and I've taken screenshots and put it all together in one thing. And you can't see all the Max for Live devices, which were literally on every channel of this, would have like 5 or 6 Max for Live devices doing nonsense. So here we've got, at the start, there's a load of, this is controlling all my monome stuff, and then you've got like, I can't even remember, if I'm really honest. I wouldn't know where to begin with this. There's this bit here in the white. That's the only bit where I could actually play clips out of Ableton the normal way and it'd be useful to me. So it wasn't much for every song. And then this whole section here, there's no clips at all, because this is just like layers of channels that would get things through them or not, depending on the circumstance. So imagine you turn up on stage, you've got 5 minutes for your sound check in Philadelphia Arena, and there's 15,000 people about to come in, which was where I was at that, whatever. And something's not working, then digging in this pile of nonsense just becomes like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to find out which one of these 105 channels isn't doing what you thought it was doing? The other problem was that I bought the fastest laptop I could afford, and it took it a whole minute and a half to load this set. And the one show we played with it, it got 30 minutes into the set and then just died on me completely. And I had to reboot, restart. Time passed. I died a little. So I kind of thought, I can't do this. You've got to be a professional. It doesn't matter if you think you're improvising if it crashes the whole time. So it's kind of, and it's very hard to debug in Ableton. Live support are really nice. Max Cycling 74 support are really nice. They really want to help. But when everything's in Ableton and you've got VSTs, Max for Live plugins, scripts you are running to try and make it work better, they have no idea where the bug is coming from. It's really hard to pin it down in something like this. And also, if halfway through the tour you decide, I just want to put a bit more treble on that part, then you've got to sort of get to that point, play it through to that part, adjust the treble till you like it. Then you've got to go backwards and get all the controls in the right place for where you put them when you save the live project. And so it kind of felt like I was stuck with this thing, and anytime I wanted to improve it in any way, it was just a pain and, a real nuisance. So the main thing is this is totally overwhelming. Like, I had my monome next to me, and I could use that to kind of perform or jam or whatever. But the computer, I'd brought a computer with me. It has a screen, but that screen is useless. I can't, there's no way, if I look at this screen during a performance, I'm in a completely different world. Like I have to go into it in order to understand anything. And I've left everybody in the room who's listening to the music alone without me to some extent. That's what it, I mean, to me, that's what it feels like. So this setup, like in my head, I was thinking you need like a shallow interface that you can just glance at rather than going into. And you need something that's going to be more reliable and something that's going to be, I don't know, funner than this. So the next stage was I built a huge Max patch. I think everybody who uses Max MSP at some point builds themselves a huge Max patch with all their ideas in it. And it was beautiful. It had 9 pages, tabs to switch between them, a matrix for mixing, which is terrible. It seems like a really good idea to have a matrix to connect lots of modules together. But if you think about the path between I'm going to wire this module to that one, that's like you've got to find the point and turn that one up, and then you've got to find the other point and turn them up, and then you think, oh, I want to swap them. It's a bad way of doing anything. And I was using Max's preset storage objects. Like Max tells you, oh, I could do this. Like we have preset storage objects. You could put your songs in them, and it'll just switch everything automatically. And then it just dies under the pressure of switching 9 pages of nonsense for your songs, because most of what's there is redundant. Yeah, so I could jam in this, but it wasn't, the matrix made it unfun and slow. And the thing I learned during this process was that if you ditch Ableton, you then have to build all the things that Ableton was doing for you. Like I thought I would be fine with just step sequences and all my generative shit. And halfway through setting up the set, I realized, oh, you do actually need to play MIDI clips with funny timing. So I had to build that. So it kind of, yeah, so you get to this, so I'd put a lot of work into code and I'd had a lot of fun on tour, but this is like 10 years and I still hadn't really got to the point where it felt like an instrument. Like it was super nice to listen to Gwen talk because it reminded me she's an instrument builder, and in some way what I see myself doing is building instruments. Every song on that Inheritors album, the patch that was the song is the instrument, and building it, tweaking it, getting it to the right place, and then performing with it, that's my whole practice, and it kind of always has been since that point. Yeah, so that was the thing. Thinking about that, thinking about what's a meaningful performance on stage and what's wrong with all these previous approaches I've tried. And I started on Benny. It wasn't even called Benny then. And how can I solve all these problems was my goal. So I'm just going to restart Benny to clear it. I wonder what was wrong with that. It doesn't matter. Okay. Still hear me? Yeah. So this is what happens when you start Benny. It looks like this, and purposefully, it's quite a blank canvas. There isn't another page you can go to that's a timeline, and that is, to be honest, that is maybe the main feature of Benny. There isn't. My problem with all of the DAW software is that you open it up and it shows you a picture of the space you're going to fill. Like it shows you your expectations. This software, its main purpose is for you to make a linear MP3 file that then Daniel Ek won't give you any money for. And what's the point? Like the point of music is to play it. And so Benny is entirely focused on that act of playing the music. You can record out of it. It's really good at taking stems. It syncs up with Ableton Link, whatever. But it doesn't have this facility to treat music as something that you can look at a picture of and move around. Music is something that you just do. You turn the knobs off, you press buttons, you play keys. You don't pre-plan it as a... I'm getting dogmatic. And it's also, given my mistakes with my computer having to load too much shit that it's not really using, or for me to have to look at too much shit that I'm not really using, Benny is also entirely modular, down to the fact that like this clock, which is like a clock in a modular synth, but that's an option. You don't have to have it there. You can get rid of it. You can replace it with a clock which isn't linked to the global transport if you want. You can use oscillators as clocks, whatever. The same goes for every part of it. If you don't like my bits of it, it's all just max MSP. Just there's F6. Is that gonna do it? Oh, come on. There you go. You can just press a button and open up the patch and fix it for me if you want. I should at this point mention that it's open source, and obviously free as a result of that. And you don't need to buy Macs to run it. Because when I started in music, I was a penniless student and I started on some free software called Buzz. If it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have started it. So I feel like this is quite important. Benny is also designed to stop you having to buy stuff, because I see a lot of the modular world is really consumption based, and a lot of people are buying modules which you don't need that. Benny does it for you, so you can just buy the interesting modules like the Wasp filter that I recommend, and not bother. You don't need to buy an envelope or a sequencer or something, because these are things that a computer can do just as well. So this page of Benny is the structure of it. And I think what I'm going to do is show you from scratch. I did think about making demos. Obviously, the first one didn't go as well as I hoped. But I thought, actually, I've been quite into the live coding scene, and they do stuff from scratch. I'll just start typing. So it's the fun of Benny is that this is quite quick and easy. So if you double click, you get a menu of I've called them blocks, which is my word for like a module in Benny. And they're divided by types. For example, down here I've got VST plugins. It loads VSTs, Max for Live devices. And then you've got stuff like utilities and effects. And here we've got hardware. So this filter here is literally this filter that wasn't working a minute ago. I think a wire's come out of the back, if I'm honest. And then, yeah, etc. There's all kinds of stuff in here that you can dig into in your own time. Voices is my word for when you've got, like, sources is oscillators like you find in a modular, like a basic oscillators or noise sources or whatever. Voices is my word for when it's kind of more of a complete instrument voice. So if we just load up the most basic of them, and you just drag things to connect them, and you can connect anything to anything, I should say at this point, but Benny tries to work out what you're doing. So I've dragged an audio block to an audio output, so it's decided to make it an audio connection. That's fine, let's go with that. And then another really important thing about Benny is to make it flowy. It has this idea of auto map. So now I've clicked on this voice basic block, it's there already. And it's also, if you're down the front, you can see my MIDI controller it's made its LEDs match the colors of what's on there. So it's really easy for me to see that. There you go, I've got like a voice up. That's nice, whatever. But I want a polysynth. So if you just press plus, it adds voices to it. And what I was interested in, I mentioned at the start that I became really interested in building polysynths incorrectly. Kind of inspired by, I bought a Prophet 600 when I was in Japan once, and one of the voices was broken, and it was more fun. They had some nice Prophet 600s, and then this one was really fun to play, because you play a little riff, and all the Fs are a bit quiet or something, and suddenly it's got more life in it than you thought you'd put into it. It's surprising you, you're reacting to that surprise, something comes out. It inspires you to write a song. So in this case, for example, I know, I'll make a little sequence. So here's the most basic possible sequencer, and almost every sequencer needs a clock, so I'll wire it up like that. Step record. I've put one too many, haven't I? There we go. Don't know what that'll sound like. Let's see. So what I could try doing, for example, what about if the second oscillator of this synth was just up an octave? Ah, yeah. And then what about if the third one was a saw? Which kind of works as a, like, for me, this just opens up a million things instantly. Like, it's a lot of fun. You can do stuff like, if I add loads of voices and make it go really fast, I can kind of tilt things like that. Kind of all kinds of. So it opens up different musical expressions that are quite hard to get to other ways. If you imagine trying to patch this up in a modular, that would be annoying, I think. Yeah, and everything's got this property of being nearly optionally polyphonic. So if I press plus, this sequence has now got 2 lanes, and just like sort of modular stuff, maybe I could use, whoopsie, gone. So let's take the value out of the second voice and put it into offset for the sequencer in the first voice. And then perhaps how about I'll give cool. So you can see the second sequence is adjusting the settings for the first sequence, and then you kind of end up with, this is just stuff you do in a modular synth, I guess. Like, it's kind of normal modular synth stuff, apart from I can now save this and load it tomorrow and it'll actually work for me. Cool. So showing the hardware integration of this, if I click on a wire, you've got all these options for how it kind of, I'll show you this actually while it's in front of me. This is a little panner, and it kind of lets you rotate and spread, and which is fine for like mixing things to stereo, but also if you think about modulation, if you've got LFO modulating the tone of some oscillators in a polysynth, you can kind of rotate and spread those modulations and control that, just for different ways of getting life into sound, really. What I was going to show, yeah. So if you click on a wire and click insert block, then you can just you can just let's put a filter on it. And that's a bit lifeless. So how about you can just take the envelope from all of those voices and send it to the cutoff, maybe. I suppose I should point out because I really want my records to sound good, and I think I trust my ears quite a lot after this long. Things like, are the oscillators any good? Yes, I spent loads of time on this and learned to code properly and everything. So these are really nice, clean oscillators that don't alias at the top. But you do immediately notice once you start putting it into some analog stuff, then that extra layer of sort of saturation and kind of fuzziness is makes it does sound better, doesn't it? It's like immediately much more exciting through this. Yeah. And just as an example, this pan spreader thing, this is the envelope of all these oscillators going to the filter, and I can just kind of rotate it around. So if I do this, then only one voice is going to really hit the envelope. Which is like a really basic example of what you can do with this kind of polyphony, routing, messing around stuff. What time is it? Okay. So that's kind of, so there's a lot more to Benny. Obviously, I wanted to show how to make a noise in it, and explain the idea behind it. But there's, for example, I think maybe what would be better if I actually load a song. I wonder if these work now. Whoops. So to show to help you play a song, there's this page where, as I was discussing the overwhelm of what's on the screen in Ableton or something like that, this page, you get to choose what's on the screen. So you decide which blocks are important to this song, which information do you want to see. I've left quite a lot of redundant info on the screen here. But you can see kind of over here, this is the scale that the quantizer that makes the arpeggios is in. Over here, you can see that this tracker, if I open it up, that's feeding the chords to the quantizer. But I don't really need to, so the version of it that you see on this page just shows you where it is in the pattern, or if I've moved the loop or something, you can see that. And I've got things like effects controls up here and a clock so I can see where I am. And kind of, in this song, there's a microphone in, and I can see when the gate on the microphone is opened, which is essential information. But imagine if I was doing this in Ableton and I wanted to see if the gate on the microphone was opened, I'd have to go to the channel in Ableton and look at the gate, whereas everything I need is right here in front of me. The other thing that's always available in Benny is this thing I've called it states. And it's like scenes I've got a really good demo of these actually. Let's go demo songs, blips. It's like scenes in, Keen. So with states, you can assign a set of parameter values to a state per block, or if you select a load of blocks, you can assign it to lots of blocks, or not. So you don't have to include a block in any given state. So one could just be affecting the bass parts of your song, and other states could be affecting the lead parts of your song. And also you can crossfade between states. So these are just like it's just in silly noises, but I can kind of, and if I had you can see it it interpolates anyway between them. Let's shut that up for now. I think that's the main bits of it, really. There's a sort of screen where you can trigger them directly as part of your performance. Oh yeah, and another on this page with the structure, what I thought was really important is that you can see at any point what's happening with your signal flow. So each voice, if they're audio voices, they have two outputs, and you can see them. You can kind of zoom in and out on these as much as you want to. And with my modular system, someone released a oscilloscope module for the Eurorack at the point when I was beginning to develop these max patches, and it was out of stock everywhere, and I was on a waiting list for it. And by the time it was available to buy, I'd built oscilloscopes into my Max patch, and I didn't buy it. And that was the end of me really thinking about Eurorack Modular. It was this realization of, we were waiting for this thing. It was going to be £200, and you didn't even need it. Like, you've got it right in front of you. You had it. Your PC's cheap, and you had it in the PC already. I think that's really important in terms of understanding when you've got a huge, a big complicated patch. Then that having these oscilloscopes and kind of there are also MIDI meters that pop up. What should I play? Go on, let's play one of these. So I'm going to mute it so I can talk, but you can just look, you can see on these. So this song is made by these envelopes go into these quantizers and drive those oscillators. Whoopsie. And you can see the signals actually happening. So a trigger happens, and their little flashes of that dot represents a MIDI note. And then you can see the envelope going up and kind of, yeah, there we go. You can see it kind of happening. So if something wasn't working, if I had time to debug the patch before, it probably would only take a minute to get it making those arpeggios properly. But let's not do that. I think we've got about 5 minutes left, and I'm quite up for questions if anyone's got any or not. Yeah, cool.
You all got a question? Hi there, that was great. Thanks to you. I guess pretty basic question. What are you running on your left? Just a
This.
yeah.
This. So this is Benny will run fine on a laptop now, but when I was first developing it, it needed the graphics was taking too much power for my laptop to manage. So I built this. The plans are actually on my GitHub for free, and also the plans for this modular case are on my GitHub if you want to give it a go. It's half 3D printed, and then I got a couple of bits of metal milled in China, but it's basically a desktop PC with a proper nice graphics card, like a gaming PC, basically top end stuff, with loads of fans at the end here, and it makes loads of noise. But on stage, all the lights make loads of noise, so it doesn't matter. And it's fast and stable, and it kind of works. So I'm really happy with it.
Fantastic. Is that interface as well? You got ins and outs on the.
So the interface is actually on here. There's I have an RME sound card here which has ADAT connectors, and then expert sleepers make modules which have 8 ins and 8 outs on ADAT. So I think I have 24 ins and 32 outs from the computer into this modular. And then because Benny does all the boring stuff, this modular gets to be, I've got filter, delay, like analog delays that sound sick and kind of better than computer delays do. And then I've got filter, and a phaser and a distortion by Tom Whitwell, who was here yesterday's London Drive distortion.
Great stuff. You're absolutely mad. Love it. Thanks.
Really nice work. The software looks really incredible. What is this running on? Is this a web app? It looks 3D. Can you talk about the software? How have you made this?
Yeah, so it's running in Max MSP, and they have, I mean, if you want to buy it, it's quite expensive, Max MSP, but they have a free trial, and it runs forever, but you just can't save Max patches, which you don't need to do because Benny has its own save mechanism. So basically you can download the trial of Max, download Benny, and then use it for free forever. Only if you wanted to make your own blocks, you'd need to buy Max for that. Max is great because it lets you wrap up. It's got Java, like most of the interface is handled by JavaScript, which is sloppy and suits me because I'm a stoner vibe programmer. And then the sound stuff is done in Max MSP, and then they have a low-level language called Gen, which is quite similar to C, basically, in terms for audio programming. And that means that a lot of the audio stuff in here is quite good quality and sound and runs quite efficiently as well. Now, a big advantage, just on that note, when you use Ableton and you run Max for Live plugins in it, it can only use one core of your PC for that. This computer's got 12 cores, so you'd only be using a 12th of your potential DSP power. I think Ableton assumed that you're going to be using loads of VST plugins, but I just wasn't, so it just was not efficient use of power. Whereas Benny, Max lets you use multi-core processors quite effectively. So you can see the CPU meters in the corner here, and it's the yellow bars are CPU, and it's nothing. And this is like a whole patch. See, it's also quite efficient about it turns itself off for the most part if it can. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for listening.